All right, you guys want to get started? We got 20 minutes, which is not a lot of time. I'm just going to let him adjust the mic, and then we should be good. All right, so when I've been teaching this for about 10 years on financial wellness for academic physicians. And when I started 10 years ago as a resident, I had one of our physicians, one of our attendings in their mid-50s come up to me and say, hey, can you help me with my own personal stuff after this? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. And what I found out from that person is that they were living paycheck to paycheck and did not have enough saved for retirement. And that just boggled my mind. There was no reason that any emergency physician should be in a place where they're living paycheck to paycheck and they don't have enough for retirement. And so that's why I wanted to bring this to you guys, which is what I call the road less traveled, financial wellness for the academic physician. I have no relevant financial disclosures to make. And I really do think that financial wellness is about physician wellness. So if you actually look at more and more data that's coming out, if you are able to take care of the people that you love at home, you're not worried about, are you going to make rent this month? You're not worried about what you're going to do when you retire, then it allows you to take better care of yourself and your family and your patients as well. And this evidence is growing and growing, and that's why I think this is a really important topic for all of us. So I want you guys to focus on the concepts when I'm speaking. I've actually provided a pretty extensive appendix, which has a lot more detailed information, but for the purposes of the 20-minute speech here, pay attention to the concepts because that's really the most important thing for you guys to take home. So I know there's people joining us from all over the world. Most of what I say, probably 80% or more, applies to you whether you live in the United States or not. And similarly, even though I've entitled this Financial Wellness for the Academic Physician, even if you go into community medicine, much of what I say will still apply to you as well. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the value of compounding and compound interest. And I'm going to give you an example here. Let's say you're 30 years old, you take your first $100,000 after you finish residency, and you put it in some investments where you can earn 8% a year on that. At the end of 10 years, you'd have about $200,000. At the end of 20 years, you'd have about $400,000. At the end of 30 years, you'd have about $1 million. At the end of 40 years, you'd have a little over $2 million. And at the end of 50 years, you'd have close to $5 million saved. But here's the problem. Most of my friends who graduated at 22 years old and went to work for Google and Microsoft were making their investments then. As a physician, and especially as an emergency physician after residency, you are 10 years behind most of your peers. Look at the first 10 years, right? The first 10 years is only worth a little over $100,000. The last 10 years is worth $2.5 million. And that's what you're missing out on by doing your training and delaying your income earning years. And that's why it's really important to start saving now. The money that you save soonest is going to be the most valuable money that you have. So I want to talk about some retirement numbers that I think are really important for everybody to know. So the first number is 20%. 20% is the percent that you should try to save of your gross income for retirement. So let's use an example. If you make $250,000 as an academic physician, you should save about $50,000 a year in retirement. Another important number to know is 4%. And 4% is the percent of principal that you can spend in retirement safely and not run out of money. So let me put that a different way. If you have $1 million in a retirement account and you retire today, you could spend 4% or $40,000 every year of that and not run out of money during your retirement. And the reason that's so important is because of this next slide. I don't know if someone over there needs to hit the light. So this slide is one of the most important slides and also one of the most sobering slides. This shows the net worth for physicians by age. And you can see that red bar is those who are worth less than $1 million. The aqua bar is those $1 to $5 million. And the purple bar is those worth more than $5 million in net worth. And I would fully expect that if you're 35 years old, maybe even 40 years old, you're probably not going to have $1 million in net worth, and that's okay. But look at those doctors who are retirement ages, who are 65, who are 70, who are 75. look at what percentage of them are in that red bar. And it's about 25%. And so let me put this again a different way. 1 in 4 physicians who are retirement age have a net worth less than $1 million. Now, we just talked about that you can spend $40,000 safely if you have $1 million. And I don't know what your residents at your hospitals make, but my residents make more than $40,000 a year. And even though the amount that you need to save for retirement is going to be different for everyone depending on their spending habits, I would bet that for most of you, living on less than a resident salary in retirement is not where you want to be. And so the reason that I'm giving this lecture, and what I hope you will take away from this, is that all of you, after you leave here today, by the time you retire, will at least be in that aqua bar, and hopefully many of you will be in that purple bar. And there's no reason that any physician, and I lecture to physicians all across the country in different specialties, even the lowest paid physician should be able to make that purple bar with smart strategies. All right, so I'm going to give you the road to financial success. Number 1, set a budget and stick to it. So a budget is really easy to make. This is one that I have made up, but there's a couple key components. The first thing is you take what your income is, and you can divide it so you have your monthly income, and then you need to figure out your expenses. You look at your fixed expense. Those are expenses that are harder to change, like your mortgage, your student loan payments, and you look at your variable expenses, which are those that are easier to change. Notice the other thing that I have done here. I have budgeted for retirement at 20% in this example, and I recommend you all do the same. And it's really easy to do this. It takes probably 30 minutes or an hour on Excel, and most credit card companies and most banks allow you to easily categorize this to come up with a budget, and then to check every month and see if you're meeting that budget. All right, step number 2. Get rid of your debt ASAP. So I personally believe that there's no such thing as good debt, but some are definitely worse than others. And I will tell you this is a little bit of a controversial statement. There are a number of financial planners and gurus that say some amount of debt and certain debts are good to have. I do not fall in that category, and I think you should try to get rid of your debts as soon as possible. But I do think, and there is agreement on this, that some debts are definitely should be paid first. And we sometimes call this a waterfall. So you do the first one, and then once you pay that one, you do the next one and the next one. And generally, for most people, that's going to be your consumer and high-interest credit cards are the ones you want to pay first, then your student loans, and then your mortgage debt. Now, I see a lot of people who look like they're maybe in residency, just out of residency, and I know student loans and the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program is something that's top of mind for everybody. So this is my simple chart on what you do. And essentially what it says is if you are a resident or fellow, repay is generally the program you want to be in. Unless you have a high-earning spouse and you file your taxes separately, then it's going to be pay as you earn. If you're not and you're an attending, you say, am I at an academic place or a nonprofit where I qualify for public service loan forgiveness, and that's what I want to do? If that is the case, you pay your payments for 10 years, you get it paid off, and you go that direction. And if not, you should pay down your loans ASAP as much as you can and refinance. And I will say there's one caveat here. So this is the general rule in, I guess, normal times. As many of you probably know, there's a pause on student loan payments that the federal government has that's now started in 2020. It's going through August, at least for right now. If you are in that category where you're considering refinancing, what I recommend is pay off your loans ASAP. That part is still true, but don't refinance until that student loan pause has ended. And then the other note that I will make is that there are some special considerations that the government has done that go into effect, or in effect until October 2022, where you can get credit for past public service loan forgiveness payments that may not have counted. And I recommend all of you look in how to do that because that's important as well, and you can credit for literally months of time. So step number 3, maximize your tax advantage retirement savings. So a couple of numbers to know. So one is $61,000. That is the amount in 2022 that you can put in a tax advantage 401k or 403b. $20,500 of that is your voluntary contribution, and the rest is different types of matching. You can also, at many academic and nonprofit institutions, invest in 457, which is another $20,500. For those of you that work for for-profit companies, some do have this, but I would be hesitant to invest in that, and it has to do with some of the liability issues there for the company if they were to go under. And also you can put up to $12,000 if you're a married couple, or $6,000 as an individual in a backdoor Roth IRA. So adding that all up, many of you will have access to up to $93,500 in tax-advantaged retirement savings. And remember what I said at the beginning, that your goal should be to save 20%. So $93,500 is approximately 20% of $450,000. I don't know many academic physicians that make $450,000, and so put another way, you should be able to put all of the money that you need for retirement in some type of tax advantage account as an academic physician. The next question I always get asked is, where do I put my money? And I'm going to give you an easy way that you can do it yourself. And the first number you need to know is 3. And it's three types of mutual funds that you need to invest. That's it. It is a total U.S. stock market, an international stock market fund, and a bond fund. And that's all you need. And then the only hard part is, what percent do you put in each? And it's going to depend on your age and how long you have until retirement. So the ones in blue are equity stocks, stock mutual funds. They're going to have a higher risk and a higher reward. But over the long term, they're going to do better. So the further you are from retirement, the higher percentage you want to put in those. The bond funds are going to give you less return, but are much safer. So the closer you get to retirement, the higher percentage you want to put in that. And just to give you an example, if I was to come out of residency, a good mix that I would recommend and that I recommend to my residents is 70% in the U.S. stock market, 20% in an international stock market fund, and 10% in a bond fund. All right, fourth step, protect your loved ones. So I'm going to talk a little bit about life and disability insurance. So the first number I want to give to you guys is 6%. This is the percent chance that of the average American worker of dying before they hit retirement age. Now, I think for doctors it's probably a little bit less than that, but you're going to see the concept that I'm going to give you is going to hold true. Because the second number is 27%. And that is the chance that the average American worker gets disabled at some point before retirement. And so even if these numbers are a little bit different for physicians, because these are for all Americans, the trend holds true. You are far more likely to become disabled than you are to die before you hit retirement age. And so the consequences of that is, how do you protect yourself? And the first thing to do is to get something called term life insurance. There's other types of life insurance that go by many other names, but term life insurance is what you should be looking for. It is a commodity. And what that means is you can go out on the internet, you can get the best quote, and you can buy that term life insurance. The second thing for term life insurance is you can do some stuff to play around with it to modify it for your own personal financial plan. And I'll give you an example of something that I do called laddering. So you can get a $1 million policy for 10 years, a $1 million policy for 20, and a $1 million policy for 30 years. And so when you're young and you don't have a lot of money to self-insure, you have a $3 million life insurance policy. But as you get older and you put more money in the bank, those policies go away, and this costs you less than buying let's say, a $3 million policy for 30 years. And then the second type of insurance is disability insurance. And what you want is portable, own occupation, individual disability insurance. This is a complicated topic. It is not a commodity, and I've given some notes in the appendix for this, but I recommend that you get this before you leave residency if you can, because that's when you're youngest and healthiest. But to do that, I would get somebody who specializes in this type of disability insurance and talk to them, because the different people that offer this insurance, the products are actually very different sometimes. And so you need specialty help to get it, but you should get it when you're young and healthy. All right, we have made our retirement cake, and now we need to put our icing on our retirement cake. And so it's what I call the academic advantage. And this is one of the things that applies to many academic institutions. And the first number is 20,000. And that is the average value of a family health insurance policy. And many academic institutions, at least partially, if not fully, pay for you and your family's health insurance. And they subsidize a portion of it. So that could be worth up to $20,000 for you and your family, essentially added as a benefit that's added to your salary, right? You're not paid that money, but they're paying it on your behalf so you have good health insurance. So it's something to keep in mind when you're looking at academic jobs. And there's another $20,000. So that's the value of yearly, amortized over 5 years of family parental leave if you had 2 children during that time period. And I will tell you that that is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. I have used this, and that's like adding $20,000 a year for a 5-year period to my salary, the time that I got off to spend with my kids when they were young. And so it's a huge advantage of being at an academic institution or any institution that has some type of family medical leave that you might not get if you're contractor status, for example. There's a bunch of academic extras to think about as well. One that my institution has is backup childcare. I can get childcare for $6 an hour for 14 days a year, which is unbelievably cheap if my wife and I need to work and our childcare falls through. Another thing to think about if you have older kids is many universities that are, if you're academically affiliated with one, offer tuition waivers or discounts for your children if they go to that university. As you know, college is expensive. This could be worth tens of thousands of dollars to you. And there's a whole host of other types of benefits that many large employers and especially academic employers offer. Discounts on things like cell phones and computers and services. It's worth your time to talk to your benefits office and see what those are and take advantage of those. All right, so the road to financial success. We're almost there. 1, set a budget and stick to it. 2, get rid of your debt ASAP. 3, maximize your tax advantage retirement savings. And 4, protect your loved ones. Here are some resources. Any questions, feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer them. I'll stick around and answer some questions now if we have a little bit of time. And the last thing I want to leave you with is something that I tell my residents. Put your money to work for you now so that when you retire, you don't have to work for your money. Thank you all for your time, and I'm happy to answer some questions. I think we have a couple minutes. Any questions? Yes. Oh, yes. So that's a great question. I due to some limitations, I didn't talk about it in this. But essentially, you should have an emergency fund in cash, and it should be 3 to 6 months of living expenses. So if something were to happen, you weren't being paid, you would be fine to pay your mortgage or your rent, your car payments, to buy food for 3 to 6 months. I will tell you, I am on the conservative side. I have about 6 months, which, when you're an attending, is a bigger number. Yep. Another question? Yeah, so index funds are simply a type of mutual funds. These are the ones that I gave are indeed index funds. You can go to any of the big brokerage houses, so you can go to Fidelity or Vanguard, and they all have a total U.S. stock market stock market fund. The only difference between an index and a mutual fund is an index follows something. So if you bought an S&P index fund, it's going to track along with the S&P 500. If you buy a total fund, it's going to track along with the total market, as opposed to buying an energy fund or a biotech fund. But an index fund is a type of mutual fund, and that is what I recommend. Yes. Yes.
What do you tell your people when the stock market is dropping and there's recession coming and the doom and gloom that we're experiencing right now?
So this investment strategy works being a long-term investor, right? Your time horizon is at least 5 years, and for those of you who are just out of residency, you're looking at 30 plus years of retirement. If you look at the stock market over that time, it has historically always done well over that time period. So the key is not to panic. You set it and forget it and don't look at it. So put your $5,000 a month, $2,000 a month, whatever it is, auto invest it in your Vanguard or Fidelity, and don't look at it for 30 years. That is pretty much what I recommend to my residents. The worst thing you can do is try to sell, as long as it's in your retirement funds. Yep. I wouldn't trust any of that. I think a high yield savings account is the way to go. Relatively speaking, when you're first out, it's going to seem like a lot of money in cash. But as you go through the years, once you're 5 or 10 years out, you're actually going to have most of your money in your retirement accounts. And that cash number, even though the dollar value may be tens of thousands of dollars, is going to be a small percentage of your net worth. I'm okay giving up that percentage to know that it's safe and it's accessible to me whenever I want it. Yep. Any other questions? I think we're at time. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Oh, so there's some that are called the total market funds, and you just have to look. You just have to look at the name. Yeah, I think it's F. I have to look at. But if you Google like Fidelity Total Stock Market Fund, it'll come up with the ticker for it. It's FXIX maybe, and there's FZROX or something, which is a zero. It even has zero fees with it, which is the total index fund. Yep. Thank you all. I'll hang up out here if anyone has any more questions. Thank you for your time.